A high-pitched cry for help by problematic _Lana on AO3. Chapter 9. Greenie needs our house. The second they went through the hospital door, everything went too fast and too slow at the same time. The kid didn't let go of Aizawa's scarf at any moment, forcing the men to follow him to get checked and tested. The view of the doctors running around the kid was not pleasant at all, but the fact that he didn't react to his environment until they were almost finished with the test was way worse. Shouta asked for his husband to wait for Namasa and to talk to him. The detective obviously needed to talk to him, but by going through Yamada first, he gained some time to stay with the kid, to get the muzzle off before risking putting him in a bad situation. They both needed to be at their best if they wanted to help the kid. By the time 3 nurses had managed to get the device off, they had taken a blood sample, and a doctor with an X-ray quirk came to check for any additional damage. The sight of his face, in bright light and without the metal in it, was awful. His cheeks were bloody, scratched, and the bridge of his nose had a reasonable-sized cut that was most probably the source of the blood he had seen before. The rest of his body was not in any way better condition. They changed him into a hospital gown, and even one of the nurses sucked air in as she saw his chest and back, filled in mostly old scars, with exceptions of some on his shoulder that were probably a week or so old. His ribs were showing, and they were bruised too. One particular bruise stood out and made the hero's blood boil. One perfect bruise in the shape of a hand on his upper arm. It was obviously new, like those in his ribs. His ribs were showing, and they were bruised too. One particular bruise stood out and made the hero's blood boil. One perfect bruise in the shape of a hand on his upper arm. It was obviously new, like the ones in his ribs. And yet, the kid stood still as he was cleaned by the kind nurses, up until one tried to clean his hair in the slightest. Aizawa immediately catched the change in his eyes, first slow blinking, then watering, and lastly, rubbing his eyes with the scarf. It seemed that was the last piece he needed to come back to Earth. Looking at the soft gray material with confusion, he stopped touching it, as if it was instantly hot, and looked around, still a bit sluggish. He was sitting in a hospital bed. His arm had a bandage, and the doctor was right behind him with some weird blue light coming from his fingers. The nurses also seemed to notice the change in behavior, and proceeded to leave the room to not overwhelm him. Aizawa was grateful for it. The kid's eyes started watering at the full force while watching the doctor, fear creeping in his expression. Aizawa wasn't really one to reassure kids, especially not traumatized ones, but nonetheless, he moved to his line of sight, offering his heavy scarf as playing material. The kid accepted the offer, careful as to not touch the owner. Just as his hands started feeling the fabric, the green eyes met black ones. "I in trouble?" He signed. Aizawa held his breath a second, calmly shaking his head. Why would the kid think he was in trouble? Or was it just a poor use of sign? "Could I talk to you for a second, Eraserhead?" The doctor unknowingly interrupted them. Her fingers were already back to normal. He nodded, took off his scarf completely, and left it in the kid's lap, who just locked his hold onto it. A bit too strongly, he admitted worriedly. The doctor closed the door behind her, and gave him the chart for him to see. He wasn't exactly sure why they gave him access to his medical records, but it made sense if there was no one responsible to make medical decisions for the kid. "There are 2 broken ribs, an ankle sprained, and some scarring with the bruises you saw. Most definitely the result of some quirk." She started looking blue. "Not really worrying wounds, and normally we could heal it with someone's quirk, but..." She turned to see the door. The little square glass let her see inside if she took a step back. "In this case, we cannot use any kind of quirk because he won't be able to handle the drawbacks. He is severely malnourished, and by his breathing, I'm guessing he has some type of respiratory infection. The lab results should take a day or 2 at most." She saw the kid with deep sadness in her eyes. It's gonna take a while before he is in good health, and then we could put his vaccines up to date. Do you have his vaccine records? He asked, confused. Huh? Yes, of course. He was born in the same hospital. There was no way. They had been in a hospital for maybe an hour and a half, and they'd already figured out who the kid was? Aizawa started quickly flipping through the medical files. At the bottom, there was his birth certificate. Izuku Midoriya. Midori, as in green. Part of his name was literally green. Fitting, at least. He would take a copy to take home. He kept going through the pages and stopped at the birth of date. Wait, he is 6? The tired man couldn't help but sound surprised. Yes, but he is severely underweight, and that probably didn't help him gain any height either. The woman looked at him for a few seconds, as if thinking her next words. I didn't find anything, but his mother is a nurse. She worked here up until last year, I think. I'm sorry I can't give you more to look into. That is plenty, thank you. Aizawa saw Mike across the hall. He was nervously smiling and came to his encounter, leaving Namasa behind. The poor man was still in his pajamas, and only with one hearing aid in, probably because he was in a hurry to get them. His wedding band was on, though. He automatically lost some tension on his shoulders at the sight. They always help the other to be grounded. Sho, how's the little listener? Can I see him? Did he say anything? He mumbled, moving his hands all over the place. The doctor looked at him stunned. She most likely couldn't recognize him out of his hero uniform. He's in good hands, but he has some recovery ahead of him. He settled instead of going into detail. He passed on the files and pointed to the door. Do you want to say hi? He is scared, so don't be funny. Mike looked at the doctor, and she seemed to understand that they wanted to talk alone. So she went back in with Izuku, making sure that the kid could see the hero from the little window. Aizawa had to admit it was adorable the way the kid looked at the window once every 30 seconds, pretending he wasn't looking, but still softly petting the scarf in his lap. His eyes landed in Mike's again, who looked, to put it lightly, suspicious. Mike had his eyes full of tears, and his cheeks were getting red by the second, a huge contrast with his creepy smile. Eyebrows raised, Aizawa thought something was really odd. Maybe he was nervous? They took the thing off. He added, but the expression didn't change. It was getting weird. He has a little blood on his nose, but if you don't feel up to it, you don't have to meet him. There was a long silence that was giving Shouta a bad mouth taste. What kind of charade was he playing? Well, actually, yes, I do have to meet him. The declaration sounded odd, almost mischievous. And why is that? He was kind of used to his jokes and funny things, but it really didn't seem like this was the time or place. I love you, Sashi, but you can't be funny with the kid right now. I really do hope you love me. A nervous laugh was all it took for Aizawa to know that whatever he was planning was already unstoppable. Because I used up my emergency foster license. You did what? Technically speaking, Izuku gets kind of adopted, fostered at chapter 9, but I think chapter 10 is when like the whole thing gets broken to Izuku, so I'll just say it here and then. My prediction was right. By chapter 10, Izuku was gonna get adopted. Like, chapter 10 is like, the adoption arc, Love that, love being right. I love being right here. I love being right here. I don't like being right in Elements, right? Because I said a prediction and then the next chapter, Bakugo gets hurt. So yeah, no, I don't like when I'm right sometimes. But this time I do like that I'm right. It's very interesting. Jesus Christ. I have an ankle biter who won't stop biting at my ankles. And my dude, what the fuck? Okay, I'm not gonna question anything anymore. I have a cat. This isn't my room anymore. That's his room. He just lets me live in it. But I think it's really cute how President Mike was like, ha, it's for forgiveness first, not for permission. Motherfucker's like, I really do hope you love me because we have a son now. I love that. That does seem like something Hisashi would do. Very impulsive, very, well, you see, and Aizawa being like, oh my fucking god. The fact that Aizawa knew, it's like, okay, whatever it is, it's unstoppable. Literally. And he was right, whatever it was, which was obviously the fact that Hisashi used up his emergency fostering license. It was unstoppable. I bet he talked to it with Detective Sekuichi, and Sekuichi's like, okay, yeah, sign. Yep, there you go. Signed off the paperwork, have fun. Which would explain why the doctor was giving him the medical records, considering, you know, their relation and stuff. So, yeah, I cannot wait for chapter 10. This was such a cute chapter, and I hope from here on out, this is my prediction, from here on out, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. Okay, well, not sunshine and rainbows, but it's going to be the road to recovery, healing path, which obviously there's going to be some setbacks with anything healing. You can't heal from trauma. It's healing. It's not a linear path. You don't just go forwards. No, it is not straight. Sometimes you take a couple steps back. Sometimes you stay in one area for a while and then take one step and then one step back and then 2 steps forward or whatever, right? So obviously it's not going to be, you know, sunshines and rainbows, but I do feel like from here on out, everything's going to be looking upward. Do you get what I mean? It's going to be better, right? The worst has happened. We're looking at the end of the tunnel. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, as always, Marion Drops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.